For centuries, empires have risen and fallen on the Iberian Peninsula, each leaving behind a legacy of power, faith, and bloodshed. The Romans once ruled here, their legions carving roads and cities into the land. But when their empire collapsed, a new force emerged. The Visigoths, warriors turned kings, who sought to forge a Christian kingdom from the ruins of Rome. Yet their rule was fragile. Rival factions vied for power, kings were overthrown, and the foundations of their kingdom trembled under the weight of their own divisions. And beyond the southern shores, across the Mediterranean, an empire was watching. The Umayyad Caliphate, an unstoppable force, expanding its dominion across North Africa, had set its sights on Iberia. What happened next would ignite a centuries-long struggle for control, faith, and survival, a battle that would shape Spain and Portugal as we know them today. But before the war for Iberia began, we must first understand the land before the storm, when Visigothic kings still sat on their thrones, unaware that their world was about to change forever. This is the story of the rise and fall of the Visigoths and the dawn of a new era in Spain's history. In the early 5th century, as the Western Roman Empire crumbled, waves of Germanic tribes surged across Europe. Among them were the Visigoths, led by King Wallia, who entered the Iberian Peninsula around 415 AD. Initially allies of Rome, they were tasked with reclaiming Hispania from other invading tribes, the Vandals, Alans, and Suebi. Their success in these campaigns earned them lands in the Garonne Valley of Gallia Aquitania, marking the beginning of the Visigothic kingdom in Iberia. The Visigoths established their rule over a mosaic of Roman cities, each with its own customs and governance. This fusion of Roman administrative systems with Visigothic leadership laid the foundation for a unique cultural blend. Yet, this amalgamation was fraught with challenges. Religious divisions soon surfaced. The Visigoths adhered to Arian Christianity, a doctrine that viewed Christ as distinct from God the Father, conflicting with the Nicene Christianity of the Hispano-Roman populace. This theological rift wasn't merely a matter of doctrine, it became a source of societal tension and unrest. Political instability further weakened the kingdom. The Visigothic tradition lacked a clear succession system, leading to frequent power struggles. Kings were often chosen by noble consensus, making the throne a prize for the most influential factions. The desire to obtain power kept the Visigothic kingdom unstable. One of the most notorious episodes was the assassination of King Theodoric II by his brother Euric in 466 AD. This fratricide wasn't just a family affair. It epitomized the ruthless ambition that plagued Visigothic politics. Euric's ascent, however, brought a semblance of stability. He expanded the kingdom's territories and codified laws, blending Roman legal traditions with Visigothic customs. Despite such efforts, internal conflicts persisted. The Visigothic nobility often prioritized personal power over collective stability, leading to civil wars and further fragmentation. This disunity rendered the kingdom vulnerable to external threats. By the early 8th century, the Visigothic kingdom was a shadow of its former self. Political assassinations, religious discord, and noble infighting had eroded central authority. The once formidable realm now stood fractured and enfeebled. Unbeknownst to the Visigoths, a new power was rising across the Mediterranean. The Umayyad Caliphate, having swiftly expanded across North Africa, now cast its gaze upon the weakened lands of Iberia. With each passing year, the kingdom weakened, and across the Strait of Gibraltar, the Umayyads were watching. As the Visigothic kingdom crumbled in Iberia, a new power was on the rise. The Umayyad Caliphate, an empire forged through faith and conquest, had swept across the Middle East and North Africa with unprecedented speed. From the sands of Arabia to the fertile lands of Persia, their armies crushed rivals, spreading the banner of Islam wherever they went. Founded in 661 AD, the Umayyad dynasty ruled from Damascus, expanding their empire into one of the largest in history. Their leaders, known as caliphs, wielded both spiritual and military power. But unlike the fractured Visigothic kingdom, the Umayyads were organized, disciplined, and fueled by a belief that their expansion was divinely ordained. But why did they turn their gaze to Iberia? Why invade a land across the sea? The answer lay in both opportunity and revenge. By the early 8th century, the Umayyads controlled all of North Africa. Their governor, Musa ibn Nusayr, had led campaigns deep into Berber territories, integrating fierce warriors from the Maghreb into the Caliphate's ranks. With his new allies, he sought greater conquests, but where to strike next? Iberia, weak and divided, was the perfect target. The death of Visigothic King Witiza had thrown the kingdom into turmoil, with rival factions fighting over the throne. One noble, Julian, the governor of Ceuta, had been wronged by King Roderick. Seeking vengeance, he struck a fateful deal with the Umayyads, offering them safe passage into Spain. With this betrayal, the floodgates opened. The Visigoths, already fractured, had no idea that a storm was about to crash upon them. And at its helm was a warrior whose name would be etched into history. In April of 711, Tariq ibn Ziyad, a Berber general under Musa ibn Nusayr, landed on Iberian soil with an army of around 7,000 men. They disembarked at a towering rock, one that would forever bear his name, Gibraltar, or Jabal Tariq, Tariq's mountain. Before the battle even began, Tariq made a decision that would become legendary. He ordered his ships to be burned. There would be no retreat, victory, or death. This bold act sent a clear message. They were here to conquer. King Roderick, who had only recently seized the Visigothic throne, scrambled to gather an army. He marched south, rallying a force of nearly 25,000 men. Confident in his numbers, he sought to crush the invaders swiftly. But Roderick made one fatal mistake. He underestimated his enemy. The two armies clashed in the Battle of Guadalete. Though the Visigoths held superior numbers, their forces were divided. Some nobles, still bitter over Roderick's rise to power, betrayed him mid-battle, retreating with their men. Chaos erupted, and soon the Visigothic army collapsed. With their king dead and their forces shattered, the gates of Iberia lay wide open. The Umayyads wasted no time. City after city fell: Córdoba, Toledo, and Seville. Within just a few years, nearly all of Iberia was under Muslim rule. The once mighty Visigothic kingdom had crumbled. Under the Umayyads, Iberia became Al-Andalus. Unlike the Visigoths, who ruled through nobility and military power, the Umayyads brought a sophisticated administration. Taxes were collected efficiently, roads were repaired, and cities flourished. At its height, Al-Andalus became one of the most advanced societies in medieval Europe. Science, philosophy, and architecture thrived. The Great Mosque of Córdoba stood as a testament to Islamic art and engineering. But life in Al-Andalus was not the same for everyone. Christians and Jews were allowed to practice their faith, but were classified as dhimmis, protected but second-class citizens who had to pay a special tax, the jizya. Some accepted Muslim rule, while others resented it. Deep beneath the prosperity of Al-Andalus, the embers of resistance still burned. In the rugged mountains of the north, Christian lords refused to submit. One lord by the name Pelayo would light the first spark of what would become the Reconquista. Far to the north, beyond the reach of the caliph's armies, lay a land of rugged mountains and deep forests. It was here, in the wild heart of Asturias, that a lone resistance would take root. And at its head was a man who refused to surrender. A former noble and warrior of the Visigothic court, Pelayo had seen the destruction of his people firsthand. He fled north, gathering exiled Visigoths and Asturian tribesmen who refused to accept Muslim rule. To them, he was not just a leader, he was the last hope of a lost kingdom. In 718, Pelayo and his followers took refuge in the mountains, launching small raids against Umayyad garrisons. At first, the Muslims saw them as little more than bandits, but Pelayo was no mere outlaw. He had a plan. The Umayyads, eager to crush this defiance, sent an army to wipe them out. But the mountains favored the defenders. At the Battle of Covadonga, 722 AD, Pelayo's warriors struck from the cliffs, raining arrows and stones on the advancing Muslim troops. The narrow pass became a trap. When the Umayyads tried to flee, the Asturians chased them down, cutting them apart. It was a small battle, a mere skirmish in the eyes of history, but it was the first Christian victory against Muslim forces in Iberia. And more importantly, it proved one thing: the invaders were not invincible. This was the birth of the Kingdom of Asturias, the first Christian stronghold in what would become the Reconquista. The Reconquista was not a single war. It was a struggle that spanned nearly 800 years, a war of generations. From the mountains of Asturias, Christian forces slowly pushed south. New kingdoms emerged: Leon, Castile, Navarre, and Aragon, each fighting to reclaim Iberia from Muslim rule. Victories and defeats came in waves. For every city the Christians reclaimed, the Muslims struck back. Alliances were made and broken. El Cid, the legendary warrior, fought both for and against Muslim rulers, his sword carving his own legend into history. But the turning point came in 1212 AD, at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa. United under a common cause, Christian kingdoms dealt a devastating blow to the Almohad Caliphate. The victory shattered Muslim power in Iberia. From this moment on, the Reconquista gained momentum. One by one, Muslim strongholds fell: Córdoba in 1236, Seville in 1248. By the late 1400s, only one Muslim kingdom remained: Granada. While war raged on, Christian kingdoms in the north fought among themselves. But in 1469, a union changed everything. Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon, a queen and a king, united not just by love but by destiny. Together they forged a new kingdom, combining the two most powerful realms of Iberia. Castile and Aragon were now one, laying the foundation for what we call Spain today. And they had one final goal: to end the Reconquista once and for all. For centuries, Granada had stood as the last bastion of Al-Andalus. The Nasrid dynasty ruled over a kingdom of poets, scholars, and warriors, clinging to what remained of Muslim Spain. But Isabella and Ferdinand had come to finish what Pelayo had started centuries before. For 8 months, the siege raged. The defenders fought with desperate courage, but they were outmatched. In January 1492, the last Sultan of Granada, Boabdil, surrendered the keys to the city. The Reconquista was over. After 781 years, Christian rule had returned to all of Iberia. After nearly 8 centuries, the Reconquista had ended. Spain was united. But even as the dust settled over Iberia, a new horizon called. With Iberia reclaimed, Spain's warriors and rulers turned their gaze outward. Across the vast Atlantic lay untold riches, new lands, and empires yet unknown. The conquest of Spain had ended, but a new conquest was about to begin.